Hey guys, what's up? So, this is going to be one of those reviews where I kind of dive in blindly without any notes prepared or anything like that, because this is one of those movies that I honestly full on thought that it was going to be one of those movies that I would, like, watch and I'd be like, yeah, that was good, but I don't want to take the time to review it. But, unlike, you know, a few of the movies that I've kind of just watched and not covered, this one is one that's really unique, and it's a modern horror film, and it's really surprising, honestly. I'm of course talking about the body horror film, the romance body horror film from the director of the third segment in VHS Viral, which VHS Viral itself really wasn't that good, but the third segment was probably easily the best segment, as well as the most competently made segment. And this is from those guys, and it's called Spring. And it's after reading a lot of positive reviews, I decided to go out and buy this thing for $8. And when I got home, before I watched it, I read a few more reviews, and people were like, well, it's kind of like a romantic comedy with a little bit of horror thrown in here and there, but honestly, after watching it myself, I would say it's probably on par with something like Audition, in the sense that this movie almost has a 2-hour running time, much like Audition. It feels more like a romance kind of drama comedy for like at least the first 40 or so minutes, and then you get a subtle hint of horror, and after that it's more character build up, more tension and horror kind of thrown into the mix. So this movie is about a guy that, after his mother dies, his mother was like his last living relative, he decides to go to Europe. He decides to travel to Europe because A, he gets in trouble with the police, and B, he just needs a change in his life. He needs to get away from it all. So he decides to travel to Italy, where he meets these British guys, and, well, like, I'm pretty sure most of them are British. One of them I'm pretty sure is Welsh, but they're all, like, you know, like a bunch of friends, and he decides to travel with them to this small kind of tourist town in Italy. And like, on his first day there, he meets this girl at a bar, and he decides to ask her out. Now, this girl, it turns out she has this horrible, like, secret that she keeps hidden from everybody, and that's where, like, the horror basis of this film comes from. I'm not gonna spoil it, though. Although I will admit the cover is a little bit spoiler-ish with the spines on the back, but it's not too spoilery. Like, it doesn't give you enough information to full-on ruin the film. Okay, so the acting in this film was actually very, very good. I mean, I'd heard good things, so I expected good acting. The writing is also very good, very competent. It holds together very well. The characters are really likable. They're very fleshed out. I mean, they're not the most complex characters ever, but they're still likable, and you feel for them at times, definitely. The effects in this movie. The effects, for the most part, are good. There is one scene where they use CG blood, and it is extremely obvious, and it kind of ruined that scene, because that scene was going really well, and it was really atmospheric, and then CG blood. Like, they could have just not used CG blood. They could have used real blood, or they could have not they could have just not, you know, used it. It seemed a little, and with how the scene was, it seemed a little over the top for that scene in particular. This movie, and there's like one time when you see this weird kind of like monster appendage, and it's like flopping around on screen, and At first it looks pretty good, but when it gets to the point that like it's just barely on screen, you can tell it's CG, which the CG isn't the greatest. I mean, it took me a little bit to realize it's not like as bad as Decoy's like level of CG, because the CG in that was terrible. So yeah, it was still pretty good. I mean, there's some scenes where flowers like wither and then they grow again, and those scenes are a bit iffy on the CG. But I'm not gonna gripe on it. I'm pretty sure this film wasn't made on a very big budget, but still. Let's see. Camera work is very, very good. It kind of does that thing where the camera is almost always moving. It's never stationary. You know, there's a lot of panoramic shots, but it's not like constantly moving like it's shaking. It's constantly moving as in like it's just slowly kind of, you know, moving very slightly and panning around the scene, giving the film a nice kind of look, kind of style to it. The film has a very nice use of camera angles and lighting. The film has it's very beautifully shot, I will say that. I mean, it's probably one of the most beautifully shot, like, modern horror films I've seen, or at least one of the most beautifully shot horror films of the last few years. So there's definitely that aspect of it. Music, all in all, the music's pretty good. It's a little creepy, atmospheric. The sets are good. The pacing is also really, really good. Like I said, it's very, it's kind of like Audition, with it being, you know, where the pacing is really good in Audition. But, on the gore meter from 1 to 10, 1 being something like Nosferatu and 10 being something like Braindead, Spring is probably about, a 3 or 4, maybe. While there are some pretty grotesque, like, body horror-esque scenes, they're still not some of the most grotesque things I've ever seen. You know, it's not like Cronenberg, like fucking The Fly levels of body horror, but it's still really, really competent in the way that it is, in the way that the body horror parts of the film are done. I mean, I'd definitely say it's a little bit like Cronenberg's like earlier work, stuff like The Brood or Scanners, except a little less like cheesy and kind of like immature. And I mean, I'm not saying Cronenberg's a bad filmmaker, but like a lot less cheesy and kind of silly. It's a very, very serious movie, although there are a few times where it gets comedic, and I'm pretty sure that those were mostly on purpose. So, when it's all said and done, can I recommend Spring? Yes. Yes, I can. It is definitely one of the gems to come out last year for the horror genre. And it seems like last year was a pretty damn good year for the horror genre. Last year these films were at least made. You know, last year we got Spring, as I just said. We got Wolf Cop. We got, although some people might disagree with me on this one, we got Tusk. We got The Babadook, which was probably the best one from last year. We got Starry Eyes. And It Follows, which isn't out yet, but isn't out on DVD yet, but still. We've gotten some pretty good gems from the horror genre within the past year or so, and this is definitely, most definitely one of them, and I would highly suggest you go out and pick this one up. It's definitely worth watching. I mean, only if it's kind of, if you are interested in it, if it's your kind of movie. I mean, if you're not looking for an atmospheric, you know, kind of slow burn body horror film, then don't get this one. If you're looking for something more grotesque, more like Cronenberg, The Fly levels of body horror, I don't know, look under like Stuart Gordon maybe. But I definitely say this is probably on par with The Possession from 1980, I think. It's definitely on par with that one. It has a very similar kind of tone. And all in all, I really, really, really liked this movie. Most likely, I would probably have to give it a 5 out of 5, maybe 5.5, maybe 4.5 out of 5, somewhere in there, 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10, somewhere in there. It's definitely that good. But again, it much like, you know, a lot of these movies, they are not for everybody, most definitely. But that's all I have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. So anyway, guys, if you liked the video, like my channel, be sure to like this video, favorite it, whatever you want, and maybe subscribe perhaps. I would really appreciate that. And check the links in the description below. There are links to things like my Tumblr, Twitter, all that, Facebook. All that is in the description below. Hey there, kids. Do you want to get cool stuff in the mail like this? Or this? Or even this? Well then subscribe to Horror Block today. Have you ever wanted to do cool cosplays like this? Or even this? Well, now you can. Subscribe to Moonchild Cosplay on YouTube and you can see all her tutorials on how to do cool stuff like this. Do you want to get cool horror and exploitation film t-shirts like this? Or this? Or this? Well then go to RottenCotton.com to check out all of their premium t-shirts.